I'm Todd Doherty, a Member of Parliament for Caribou Prince George, and I'm honored to be here today with Dean Gorsline and family. And Dean has ALS, and we're just here to, Dean, your story for me, as I said offline, has really kind of struck me. You're young, you're active, you're fit, and ALS has really kind of struck you down, and maybe you can walk me back from your first diagnosis. You were a combat engineer. You've served our country. You were a combat engineer in our military, our Canadian military, and that diagnosis, that first day of the diagnosis.
So, yes, thank you, Tom, for taking the time to be here today. It means a lot to our family. I was diagnosed in December 24th, 2018 at 29 years old after serving in the Canadian Armed Forces for pretty much a decade as a combat engineer officer. Fast forward from diagnosis to today, from that point in time in 2018, I've gradually lost my ability to lift my arms above my shoulders, my fingers and hands, or the consistency of gummy bears, and my core strength has been rapidly degrading, as well as my speech. My legs at this point are still capable of walking, however I often need assistance with balance. The diagnosis itself was hard, given that I was on the cusp of achieving some professional goals.
Yeah.
My wife had just finished her PhD and relocated from Edmonton to Ottawa.
Yeah.
It really felt like there was a bright new chapter that was quickly changed.
Yeah.
From my parents, I'm their only child, so watching their emotional distress compounds the reality of the situation as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for my family, the most difficult thing about the diagnosis is not really understanding what it is, in that there is no homogeneity in ALS diagnosis, and from that, there's no effective treatment currently available. And that is hard to stomach when you're told a disease will destroy your nervous system over the next 2 to 5 years until you asphyxiate and you have no way to fight.
When I was first elected in 2015, it was like, it was just literally days after us sitting as member of parliament, parliamentarians for the first time, some of us for the first time, where we got the news of our colleague across the way, Morel Boulanger, that he was diagnosed with ALS, and watching how fast it progressed with him was, although I didn't know Morel personally, it was really hard for us to take. It was very emotional. My wife and I, from one day where he's speaking and walking, and to when we saw him, literally just months later, it was hard to imagine. And the calls that we've been on, the Zoom calls, it affects people differently, and some it's very progressive and very fast, and others they've been able to, for whatever reason, it hasn't taken over their life quite as fast. You know, I guess I'll turn it to the family. Like, how was it with you guys? You know, when you get this, you know, how was it for you when you got this?
Yeah, so essentially, it was right leading up to my thesis defense, and the night before I defended, Dean got an email from a neurologist saying it's 80% likely to be ALS. So that was very difficult, because as Dean was saying, we were starting this new chapter in our life, and obviously ALS is a very devastating illness, and the rates of progression vary depending on the person, and they don't know why. There's obviously genetic factors, but for Dean, he's what's called a sporadic ALS case. So we don't have any clue, and I've been trying my hardest to research as much as possible, but I mean, the best minds in the world still haven't figured out what's causing this or how to treat it effectively. So we were quite hopeful when we heard like edaravone was, you know, going to be approved in Canada, and that was something that could potentially work for Dean. But again, because it's such a heterogeneous disease, some therapies work very well for some people and they aren't effective at all for others. So unfortunately for Dean, edaravone doesn't work very well. So that's one of 2 therapies that are approved that he can't use. And so fighting for hope is really difficult because we're looking at the, I guess, scientific landscape and how it's evolving very quickly thanks to the Ice Bucket Challenge proceeds, but ALS moves faster. So it's great that there's so much progress being made, but based on the landscape of approving drugs and getting people access to promising therapies is quite difficult. So it's something that robs us of hope at times, but all we can do is keep fighting.
Barb, how is it for you when you got the news about Dean's diagnosis?
I think it was obviously devastating because Dean is a trier, a fighter, and he was on the cusp of accomplishing his life dream. And to have that taken away was the hardest thing, to feel the disappointment for Dean, because he gives so much. He gives so much to everybody, and it seems so unkind. Just to see that possibility stolen for Dean was the hardest thing.
I think you know, we were when we were on that Zoom call before, I shared with it offline, but I actually had to put the camera on mute because, you know, I'm going to start tearing up right now even. As a parent, you have hopes and dreams for your kids, and you want to see them achieve their hopes and dreams, whether they're yours or not, they're theirs, and you want them to just go on and be do amazing things. And as I sat and watched the group that was there, the strength that you all have through ALS Action, man, I tried putting myself in your shoes, and it's really hard. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it without being bitter or ask why me. But you've got to work with a group. You formed a group, ALS Action, and tell us a little bit about, you're not sitting still. You are trying to make an impact and leave a mark, and trying to fight for those that are going to come likely after you and be stricken with this terrible disease. Can you tell us a little bit about ALS Action?
The patient community in Canada often feels that their voices aren't necessarily being heard, and we're looking at scientific progress and the fact that there's 160 new therapies in the clinical trial drug approval process pipeline for ALS. On the surface, there's the appearance of hope. When you dive into drug approval policy, both federally and provincially, and you look at the timelines associated with approving a new therapy, one can use the anecdote of, if a cure was found today in America, on average, it would take that pharmaceutical company 9 months to apply to Health Canada. We have a passive approval system federally that is reliant upon a company's initiative to apply. As a small nation with only 3,000 living ALS patients on average, there's not a huge incentive for a pharmaceutical company to apply to Canada. After they apply, Health Canada then has a 6-month review process to approve a drug that may have already been approved in America or Europe. We're now 15 months behind a cure being found. Once approved federally, the wealthy ALS patients could arguably purchase the drug and import it. However, as we've seen with Adairone, the fastest province to approve an ALS medication to date post ALS or post Health Canada approval is Quebec at 574 days after federal approval.
Oh.
Newfoundland PI still haven't approved Adairone, and BC was only in August. So with that time frame and that time delay added on to the previous 15 months, it's hard to have hope knowing that your life expectancy on average is 2 to 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a fast progressor, as the Honorable Elijah, you won't even see that cure in Canada before you pass. It is essential to make our voices heard, to ensure that the life expectancy of an ALS patient is factored into policy, so our therapies aren't next to hair loss prevention therapies.
Well, if you had one message that you wanted to give out to the minister or to those that can actually make a difference, what would that be?
We're in the middle of a pandemic. There's a lot of concerns with global trade, economy's health. So I'm not gonna stop my feet and whine for money. But your policy is not taking into consideration the life expectancy of an ALS patient. We're dying, and we're gonna die as a result of bad policy. If you factor a 3-year approval process into the equation, that means right now, if a cure is found in America, it'll be approximately 3,000 Canadians that die of ALS that didn't have to as a result of policy and a lack of coordination between the provincial approval system. There needs to be a rare disease strategy. Your paperwork is killing us.
It's a bureaucratic nightmare. Earlier this year, you did burpees. You did 1,700 burpees on the hill. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
So it was in an effort to support an existing existing ALS advocacy organization, ALS Canada, and we centered the fundraiser around the delay between federal approval and provincial coverage, and we focused on this 574-day lag time between Health Canada approving Edarva and Quebec approving it for coverage. In that period of time, approximately 1,700 ALS patients would have passed, and therefore, if every ALS patient could have had several months of life-extending therapy, every one of those families was robbed of several months together. And so we centered our burpee number that aimed to walk 1,700 kilometers cumulatively around that number.
Wow. What does life hold for you, the two of you right now? Like how do you, I don't even know how to say this. How do you move forward?
There is only forward. There's no going back on a diagnosis, and the philosophies that I subscribe to say, fight like hell and try and enjoy it on the way.
Yeah, man, you are you're such an inspiration. Yeah, I'm at a loss of words. You know, when we were driving here, I had so many things that I wanted to ask and how to present it and put it towards you, but you know, I'm just in awe of your strength. I really am, and yours as well. All of yours. I don't know how you do it. I really don't. And yeah, you know, I'll continue fighting for you, and I'm hoping that this video that we're doing today shares your story a little bit more, and that people will listen, and that we can make change.
Really appreciate that, and my family.
I carry a coin with me everywhere I go, and it's my challenge coin, and when I had a couple pieces of legislation, one that passed C211 with respect to veterans and first responders and PTSD and mental health, mental injury, and on it says heroes are human, there's strength in numbers, and on the bottom is never give up. And I'd be honored if you would have this coin. It just means a lot to me, and I think the bottom line, never give up. That's kind of your mantra anyway. So as you said, you just live every day and fight like hell while you're doing it. So Dean, thank you for everything.
Thank you, Todd. It's an honor.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.